People who work in human resources, what is the weirdest you have seen? Obscuring a few details here. You'll understand why in a second. There was a mid-level supervisor at a state agency I never got along with. Guy was nasty, argumentative, real piece of work, but still had a decent amount of people loyal to him. I come in one day and he's not there. Everyone was distraught. Turns out law enforcement had come after the guy. Caught him red-handed trafficking child. Rather than arrest him immediately, they gave him the option to return home, settle his affairs, maybe call his lawyer. He took the opportunity to simply hang himself in his own garage instead. The next couple of weeks was just damage control among the staff when the details came out. Horrible situation all around. The new receptionist was coming in every morning and opening up programs, documents to make it look like they were busy. And they'd sit with one hand on their mouse and one hand on their keyboard and stare blankly at their screen for 8 hours a day and not do anything. They'd also consistently pick up the phone and hang it up without saying anything so that it would stop ringing. I sat in on their termination, and the employee started screaming at the manager about how they were doing an amazing job, and they had to give them another chance. I was 100% confident that they were just trying to get some easy money and wouldn't be surprised that they were finally getting fired. The whole thing was just bizarre. I once had a temp job in our. I was scanning lots of old personnel files. And the one perk of the job was reading old complaints against people. The best one I came across was a mediation caused by one member of staff accusing another of witchcraft. I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people at manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the P-cup came back as inconclusive, we'd send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test and the lab could determine if the person was on a prescription or using illegal drugs and therefore not eligible for hire. So one guy failed his drug test at the lab. He came back to the office claiming that it wasn't his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car and he stuck his head up the window. Then, when the car passed under a bridge, someone threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge. It hit him in the face, and he accidentally inhaled it. We had this new hire. I heard about him through the grapevine. He was fired from his last job for masturbating in the break room. Somehow, he was hired to my company. God knows why, because I haven't heard a single good thing about from anyone ever. His job was to sweep the floor of our factory. That's not back-breaking work. It's pretty much endless. But you can take it slow and have time to chit-chat with other employees and roam around. We have retired and disabled people who do that job and they are fine with it. In the first 3 weeks he was there, I got so many write-up, extended break time, job not done after multiple request, smoking on the job and not in designated area, constantly on his phone, complaint, racist, sexist joke, body odor, OSHA violation, not wearing PPE. About him, it was hard to keep track. So I did what I always do. Fast-track his termination and send it to the head of our. I hear nothing about it until a few weeks later. I start receiving complaint about him again. I go see the head of HR, asking if those were just delayed paperwork because in my mind he was fired weeks ago. Turns out, he was never fired. He was the nephew of the head of our. She transferred him to another department. She took every complaint about him directly. Except one that got to me. He was now a security guard. But not like you see in music festival. He was a button operator. He operated the button to let the people in the factory and kept track of everybody that entered or left the site. He was under training with the sweetest old lady there is. Everybody. Even the CEO call her grandma because she just so sweet. I encounter grandma on break one day and she looked disturbed. It was not her usual break time. So I ask her what she's doing in the break room alone so early. She tell me, it's new hire. Personal time. I ask her what she mean. She tell me, well, you know. I made lots of complaint about it. Haven't you read them? I say, no. None of them got to me. She looked disturbed and almost like crying. She then tell me, since he was transferred to her, he noticed there was a computer at his post to log ins and outs. Bear in mind, this computer does not connect to the internet. Well, the second day, while grandma was gone he bathroom. He started masturbating with he brought from home on a flash drive. She caught him and he acted like it was no big deal. In the weeks that followed, he continued to on the job to the point where he would not even stop when grandma caught him. He told her, I don't give a if you watch. But if you don't want to see it, just leave. So she made a schedule where every 2 hours she would leave for 15 minutes for him to do his business. I was pissed and went straight to the head of HR with it. I told her that grandma had gotten a lawyer and was threatening to sue the company. I knew it was false. But that's the only thing that could make things move. The matter was transferred to the legal department and he was fired that very morning. The head of HR still argued that without proof, we could not fire him. The meeting ended with her storming out and saying, fine. She quit a few months after that. Edit. I'm very glad you all enjoyed that. I have so many more memories about this place of work. Not all about HR. But this place of work is basically like the TV show Dallas. Caught a site manager with like 50 plus pairs of hidden all over his office in Ziploc bags. A multitude of toys. And over $100K in cash stuffed in ceiling tiles. Took a while to unravel all of that. Call center employee calls HR to complain about their supervisor. He's abusive. He won't even let me leave my desk. Supervisor calls HR to complain about employee. Can you please tell _____ that she's allowed to leave her desk? Oh my god. She's in her trash can. It may sound humorous, but there was significant mental issues at the heart of this. Guy came into the interview in sweatpants and a hoodie. And said he didn't need the job because of how much money he was making illegally. But he wanted to have a job so the IRS didn't get suspicious. Weirdest part is I don't live in America. I very much doubt the IRS cares about Canadian tax returns. My dad works in our. He just told me about a day when they had to lay off about half of the company. It was crazy and there were a whole lot of moving parts that day. Unfortunately, in all the craziness, no one remembered to tell this one new hire that sadly the position he was hired for was no longer affordable. So he came into the office only to see everyone clearing out their desks and leaving. And then, he got laid off. An hour into his first day. He said the guy understood. But it was the most horrible he ever felt for someone in his life. While back, at a very sales-focused company, can't go into too many details. The story got passed around the industry for a while and I'd rather it remain anonymous. It was crunch time for basically every department. Lots of orders. Lots of money made but with a bunch of pressure to deliver on those orders. Tensions were a bit high. So we, HR, did a few things to raise morale and keep people happy. We had some lunches catered in. Donuts and coffee brought in for people. Just small things to bring the mood up. After a week or two of this kind of atmosphere in the office, I get notified by one of the sales managers to hold a disciplinary meeting for one of sales guys who had been around for a few years. I knew this guy, call him Dave, but never really talked to him much. Seemed all right. Not one of the ones I'd expect to be a troublemaker. What surprised me was that this meeting apparently also included one of the newer sales guys, Ben. Out of college for maybe a year. And also not one of the ones I'd expect to cause trouble. Turns out Dave had been coping with the stress of the office by sneaking into empty conference rooms with his cell phone and enjoying. IT said that since he did it on his own phone, they couldn't track it. Well, Ben stumbles across him. Which you'd think would just make an awkward moment and maybe a report to our. But instead, maybe due to stress of his own, started loudly yelling at Dave to stop slacking off and started taking swings at him. This broke out into a fistfight in the room, which drew a crowd and ultimately broke some of our video conferencing equipment. After a minute, someone managed to get the two of them apart, which calmed things down for about 10 seconds before someone made a joke about Dave throwing punches with the same hand he had been touching himself with, which somehow provoked Ben to lunge at him again and take another swing before being restrained. The weirdest part? After the meeting and like a week of internal discussion, during which both sales guys kept working to keep orders rolling in, we had to make a decision. Our department head had carefully gone over the rules and relevant laws, assault charges and things, and determined that Ben be terminated for assaulting an employee, but Dave not be fired and instead required to attend sexual harassment training to keep his job. As a result, a week later, we had to send an office-wide email informing people that referring to the incident in vulgar terms. Off the record, my favorite was Dave. "You beat that kid like you were beating your meat in there," was technically grounds for warning under our sexual harassment policies. One of the candidates I was interviewing via Skype 1. Answered the phone while in his boxers and a tank top, then stood up to grab his blazer that was probably about 3 feet away. 2. Had a site up and open during a shared screen trial to see how well he can use the digital classroom. I had to remind him I can see his screen. He goes, "Oh yeah, sorry." Next, instead of just closing it from the corner of his partially hidden window, he clicks open the window in full view, then closes it. That was nice. The maintenance guy had been living up above the ceiling of the building. He had built a little cubby living area with electricity and a small fridge and everything. Edit. For years,